everyone. Welcome to the Immunization Partnership's 11th Annual Community Immunity Luncheon. I hope you are safe and healthy during this pandemic. We're honored that you can join us today for this special virtual event. During today's event, we will honor our Immunization Champion Award winners, hear from our keynote speaker Ethan Lindenberger, and hear from some of our supporters on the importance of immunizations in their lives. Every day at the Immunization Partnership, we work to eradicate vaccine-preventable diseases by educating the community, advocating for evidence-based public policies, and supporting immunization best practices through research. And our work is all the more critical during a pandemic. We've stepped up to help keep Texans updated on the latest COVID-19 vaccine information, and we're reminding families of the importance of staying up to date on their regular immunizations during a public health emergency. We've been busy these last few months with our vaccine experts featured in numerous media appearances. We hosted a presentation on COVID-19 vaccine development with our partners, Dr. Peter Hotez and Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. We hosted an online forum with our legislative partners, Representative Sarah Davis and Representative Donna Howard. We released educational modules for school nurses, and we published 2 articles in the Journal of Applied Research. We've also created a pandemic vaccine task force of leaders and experts to make recommendations to guide the public and the Texas legislature in preparation for an FDA-approved coronavirus vaccine. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the entire team at the Immunization Partnership, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your support of our mission and our efforts to eradicate vaccine-preventable diseases. Without further ado, I'd like to kick off today's presentation.
Welcome. I'm Allison Connolly.
My name is Julie Davidson, and together with my longtime friend Allison Connolly, we are honored to be the co-chairs of this year's Community Immunity Luncheon.
Today we celebrate the wonderful people and organizations that tirelessly work to support immunizations and the integral role they play in protecting the health of our family, friends, neighbors, and communities across the state.
Many of you tuning in today have joined the Immunization Partnership on numerous occasions to support our efforts to protect communities from vaccine-preventable diseases, whether it's within your own family, at your children's school, in your workplace, or even at events at the Texas State Capitol. It's because of you that we continue striving to achieve our mission.
We're all here today because we're passionate about vaccines. We're here to be part of the effort to prevent what's preventable. Thank you so much to our wonderful sponsors who've made today's event possible. Thank you to Community Health Choice, our Ralph D. Fagan, MD Award for Excellence honoree, and to Jacqueline Cox, our John R. Bettinger Jr. Award for Community Partnership honoree, for allowing us to honor you, even though we can't see you in person today.
Thank you also to Ethan Lindenberger, our keynote speaker, who will share his inspiring story with us today. Ethan, thank you so much for offering to do this virtual event. Lastly, we look forward to hearing from Jamie Shanbaum and Ricky Graves as they share their personal accounts of the power of immunizations.
We hope you enjoy today's program. Thank you again for joining us for the 11th Annual Community Immunity Luncheon.
Hello everyone, my name is Susan Vigan Harris, and on behalf of our family and my sister Debbie, my brother Michael, I'm so pleased to come to you today from my home to congratulate Community Health Choice on receiving the Ralph D. Fagan Award this year. We are so pleased to give this award to Community Health Choice for their leadership in vaccine awareness, education, and advocacy. Congratulations, Community Health Choice.
Hello, I'm Catherine Mitchell, COO for Community Health Choice. Community is deeply honored to receive the Dr. Ralph Feigen Award of Excellence as recognition of our commitment to immunization education and advocacy for vaccine-preventable diseases. Through the years, community has focused on helping our members stay vaccinated and healthy. We also partner with other advocates in our community to host immunization events, create education materials for at-risk communities, and amplify the work of leaders like the Immunization Partnership. In addition, community's commitment to help protect members in the larger community from vaccine-preventable diseases. We also invest in efforts to protect public health from diseases for which we do not yet have a vaccine, like Zika and now COVID-19. TIP's focused efforts to advocate for clinical-based vaccine policies is even more important, with a greater urgency. Thank you for honoring community health choice, and thank you, TIP, for leading us towards a healthier future.
Hello everyone, my name is Michelle Bediger, and I have the honor to introduce the recipient of the John R. Bediger Community Partnership Award. I truly miss seeing each one of you in person, but I know that you're doing your part to flatten that curve, protect our community, and actually, many of you are serving on the front lines, healing with compassion during this unprecedented time. My late husband, John, would be so pleased to know that this year, Jacqueline Cox is being recognized for her inspirational service in our community to prevent what is preventable through informed immunization practices. Jacqueline's family and my family have been associated for years with a common commitment to the health and vitality of Texas by serving on vital leadership organizations like the Immunization Partnership, the Texas Lyceum, and the Junior League of Houston. Jacqueline is a well-informed, ambitious advocate to create a better future for all of us. Congratulations, Jacqueline. I cannot wait to see you and give you a big celebratory hug. I wish you and all of yours the very best.
It is my honor to be associated with the Immunization Partnership. What began as a simple cup of coffee and conversation with John Bediger 11 years ago became an opportunity to learn and to serve. TIP has worked diligently to form relationships with our medical community, government leadership, and individual stakeholders over the years. It has been a privilege to serve alongside so many wonderful leaders in our community, and I'm deeply honored by today's award. As a former board chair of TIP, it has been spectacular to see the Immunization Partnership pivot and respond as the dialogue around vaccines evolves. TIP is always on the forefront of communications and advocacy that are direct, meaningful, and most importantly, scientifically based. I am proud of the organization and the widespread impact on the Houston community and beyond. My husband Colin and I are the proud parents of 3 wonderful children, Clayton, Gemma, and Marshall. They remind me daily that it is so important to pass on our message to the next generation. They know that each vaccine they receive not only protects themselves, but protects the most vulnerable in our community. Sharing that message with them, even when they are very young, is so important. To the TIP staff and board of directors, thank you for being such strong stewards of TIP each and every day. It is a tremendous honor to be recognized by TIP. I feel humbled and very grateful to have been a part of the Immunization Partnership's transformative work. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ricky Graves. This is my daughter, Juliana Graves. Juliana is 6 years old, and she just finished kindergarten. Juliana attends public school in the state of Texas. You might not know it by looking at her now, but Juliana was really sick when she was born. She was born with a severe congenital heart defect that required a heart transplant as an infant. Because Juliana had a transplant, she's now immunocompromised, and she's not allowed to receive certain childhood vaccines. We rely on herd immunity to protect Juliana. I got involved with the Immunization Partnership after a conversation that I had with her infectious disease doctor, where she told me that there were a lot of parents who choose not to vaccinate their children. I wanted to protect my daughter, and so I asked how I could help. She told me that she was involved with the immunization partnership, and she recommended that I get involved as well. I have been involved for a few years, and I have gone to the Texas state capitol to testify for pro-vaccine legislation in both the Senate and the House. I also went to DC as a parent advocate to give a presentation on pro-vaccine legislation. The immunization partnership's work is so important because it protects children like Juliana and children like her best friend who's in her kindergarten class who also is immunocompromised. Kids like them need us to fight for them, and so we need to help support the immunization partnership so that we can protect the children of Texas. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jamie Martin, and I'm here to tell you about my experience as a meningitis survivor and with TIP. I met TIP back in 2009 when I was in the hospital, and I survived meningitis. I walked onto college campus not knowing anything about it, and I almost died. And you usually die within 24 to 48 hours of catching this disease. I was in the hospital within 14, and I didn't leave the hospital for another 7 months. And when I left, I was an amputee of all of my fingers and both of my legs below the knee, and I was 80 pounds and in a wheelchair. Not ideal for a college student. However, when I was there, I did meet TIP. They were educating me and wanted to be a friend, and they were, and they still are. And they showed me how I could use my story as a voice for those who don't know about meningitis. And from then on, we were able to advocate, and we were in the Texas state capitol advocating to pass a law. And in 2009, we successfully did pass the first meningitis law for college students in the state of Texas, but also all over the country. And ever since then, there has been multiple states that have joined the fight against it in college campuses, because when you're in college, you're at a higher risk of catching it due to our social behaviors. I know you can learn more on the TIP website about meningitis, but I'm always just so grateful to be part of the TIP family, and they have showed me the way / a future in my career for advocacy for vaccines. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Ethan, thank you so much for joining us today. I've been following your career and listening to you over the last several months and years, but not a lot of us know you. So tell us your story and really tell us how you became an advocate of immunization.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on and speaking to me. And it's a really interesting story. It kind of starts in a really weird place for me, where growing up, I grew up unvaccinated, which is something that a lot of people think is really strange or even dangerous. And so my mom was someone who is an anti-vaxxer. She believes vaccines are very dangerous, that they cause autism, and buys into a lot of these big conspiracies around immunizations. And so when I turned 18, I decided that I needed to kind of correct that. I wanted to get caught up on those shots because I was old enough to make that decision. And that kind of spiraled into this really bigger advocacy role than I ever expected, where I was speaking about misinformation that reached people like my mom and the importance of taking your health into your own hands, which is what I did. So I've been doing that for more than about a year now, going from the US Senate to even like Belgium and speaking in front of the EU, and a lot of really great opportunities to speak about my experience and my journey.
Well, you've been such an amazing advocate for immunization. You mentioned Belgium, but you also mentioned the Senate. You've spoken in front of the United States Congress, and you've had a lot of criticism, and so how do you take that, if I should say politely, feedback, right? How have you handled some of that angst that's come out against you?
Yeah, it's really strange because I really have spoken only about my personal experience, the relationship I have with my mom, how I manage that, how I treat her, and what I've learned from that. And that did lead to what you've said is a lot of feedback in a polite way. A lot of people, though, spoke out against me in very outspoken and very even sometimes negative ways. I think because they are truly just misinformed about this topic. And the way I deal with that is by kind of having that empathy to see that people have been misinformed by a lot of these big players that claim that you're a bad parent or a bad mother if you choose to vaccinate, and you're going to hurt or maim or kill your children if you follow through with what the doctors and what the health professionals are telling you. And when I see people coming at me and saying, what I'm doing is wrong or dangerous, or that I am a bad person for what I'm doing, I often look at them with that lens that they are misinformed and they're victims of misinformation, not perpetrators. So that helps me stay empathetic, stay kind. And very rarely do people kind of take it to that extreme level where it becomes either dangerous or hurtful in some way. And that's just how I deal with it.
Yeah. And so, like, as you talk to others, like, what message do you have for teens, adults, and really for everyone that wants to become a vaccine advocate?
Yeah, the message is very, very clear. For me, the whole purpose of my advocacy and the message I really want to get across is the importance of vaccines and how you treat people that are misinformed, how we interact with people that don't believe what we believe or don't buy into the information and the research that all of us have done. And that comes down to very core tenets of the scientific community and the way we look at vaccines, which is that vaccines are safe, they are effective, they are one of the most important public health tools and assets that we have. And those things can never be swayed. We should never look at people and say vaccines could be a little safer, or maybe they're dangerous, or maybe you're right, or maybe they're not really super effective and there's alternatives. None of that's true. And so that's the foundation. But then how you treat people that don't believe those things. And in my mind, we treat them with empathy. We treat them with this lens of you're misinformed, and there's people above that are spreading this misinformation and misleading people like yourself, typically for very clear reasons, usually monetary reasons, selling supplements, other medical advice, or other such financial incentives to convince people of these lies. And through that clear and core message of the importance of vaccines and why people are misinformed, it leads to much less bridges being burned down and much more being built. So that's the message I've said over and over again, that it's misinformed people, not malicious people, and that I would never say vaccines are dangerous or ineffective, because they are very clearly safe and effective. And so it's just a weird balance of looking at someone and saying, you're wrong, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person.
This is such an important, it's such a tonal difference, right? It's not sometimes just the words, but it's the tone. So what really struck me is the word you say about balance, right? That somebody could be wrong, but not everything about them is wrong, right?
Right.
And so this in public health, this is a big conversation right now with COVID, right? People are talking about masks, and it's like the same type of angst that we're running into society. And I think you have such a fresh take on this, because some of the old fogies like me are like, we're set in our ways, like we kind of just divide up society, people for or against. So I'm really refreshed to hear a voice about this. As you go about your way, what, a lot of people kind of go to young people and say the future's on you, right? What do you say to old people like me and others? Like, what's our responsibility?
Man, first I would say not just to old people like you, but I think to everyone, this message is really important. And I definitely think you're right that young people carry the responsibility of the future. And that's why it's important to be involved with topics, especially like this, with public health and medicine, and even sometimes with politics and stuff like that. But especially medicine and public health are things we should all agree on. And that's why it's so important to get involved. But for young people, I think that their role is the same as, middle-aged or older people, which is just to be involved and advocate for public health and to do what's right and take responsibility for yourself. And that's what it starts with, is just your own personal life. Because if you don't wear a mask, or if you don't get caught up on your immunizations, or if you don't take public health into your own hands and make it personal health, then you can't really give advice to anyone else outside of what you really should be taking care of first, which is your own business. And so for me, the first step wasn't to get on a stage and say, you should get vaccinated. It was to get caught up on my shots. And for someone else, the first step isn't to say, hey, everyone should take COVID seriously. It's to take it seriously themselves and wear a mask or take precautions and limit their exposure and do these things, and also speak about why they're doing them. And I think everyone has those tools to do that. the internet is one of the most impactful factors and like tools that people have when it comes to misleading people, but also informing people. And so a big part of that we're missing is especially older individuals, older doctors, physicians, and professionals that aren't using social media or the internet to get good information out there. But that's also where young people are really hitting that home. And so I think those are really important areas that anyone can work on. It's just taking it into your own hands and then convincing others they need to do the same. But the big question of how do we do that is a little more complicated, but I think it falls back to the same things we've already talked about, which is just remaining empathetic, remaining kind, and leading by example.
What's next for you as it relates to immunization?
I think what's next for me is really simple, and it just follows the same trajectory I've been going on. It's just the advocacy, the speaking, the kind of larger decision-making that comes along with public health. Mm-hmm. And so immunizations is one discussion, one single topic, but then COVID is a whole different kind of branching discussion where COVID has a lot of overlays with how we treat misinformed people or the way misinformation spreads or why people believe these things and how we engage with it, because COVID is very dangerous, but so is polio, so is measles. And at the end of the day, how we engage with those problems and those consequences is really important. And so I've been even doing stuff with COVID, talking to individuals about what we need to do when a COVID vaccine comes out. Like, what do we do if a coronavirus vaccine is made and people don't want to take it? What dangers could come about through that? So I think vaccines are so important that even with stuff like COVID, it comes up again and again and again. And following that wave and trying to be engaged in that discussion is what I keep doing. And I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. Vaccines are never going to be irrelevant to public health. But other than that, I mean, for me personally, just continuing to work towards college, studying journalism is what I'm working on right now, and continuing to be a part of these discussions, what I really want to do for as long as I can.
How important is it for people in Texas and across the nation to get involved in pro-immunization conversations? Right? I mean, you've taken it at a very early age, in a very personal way, in a very public way, right? Mm-hmm. But for most people that get up in the morning, go to work, like, how important is them to get involved in this conversation?
I think it's vital, because when we're talking about any individual, anyone across the entire country, in Texas or in Ohio or in California or even other countries, what I can say and do will only reach a certain crowd. And the people that might be swayed or impacted by my decisions or my advocacy or my story is kind of a select group. And it will never be the same group as people that you or I or my family might be able to reach, or my friends and my colleagues. Like, a family in Texas might be able to reach, their own family, like their cousins or their brothers or their mother, or even their friends or their colleagues or their coworkers, and those people they have relationships with. And so if you know someone who is questioning the importance of vaccines or is starting to talk about misinformation and saying, is this COVID thing really that serious? I read this thing online, or I heard that masks are really not helpful, or I heard that vaccines could cause harm. Those discussions are really, really vital, and only you can have those discussions. Only you can really impact that person's decision, and that decision they make could be the difference between someone's life being taken by a disease that's preventable or it being prevented. And that's just absolutely vital, because my advocacy is one thing, but you saving the life of your friend or someone they might have exposed the disease to is just as important, if not more.
We're coming to the end of our conversation, but I have to ask you this, and I think that I really think you're an expert in this. There is, don't laugh. You're really an expert. You've testified in front of Congress. I mean, you're a big deal. We have developed these echo chambers in our society, right? That oftentimes, when we talk about vaccine, I mean, the people watching this, right? We're preaching to the choir. Like, these are the people that agree with us. So when we talk to them, they nod their head and they go, yeah, Ethan's right. Yeah, Mustafa's right. Right? How do we reach people that don't agree with us? And what kinds of conversations, as we part this conversation, what advice do you have for the rest of us? And how do we break through? And how do we get to people that don't agree with us? Or, also people that are sitting on the fence, right? That aren't either against us or with us, but they're just kind of on the fence.
Right.
What advice do you have for us?
I think the biggest piece of advice and just the most important piece of experience I can share is that one of the core beliefs of the public health perspective on vaccines that prevention is better than cure. And that if we can prevent something, it's better than trying to find a solution to cure afterwards. And so when it comes to misinformation and trying to convince people that vaccines are important or safe, or talking to people that don't agree with us, the same ideology applies. And preventing those people from believing those things in the first place, preventing that misinformation from reaching them, or just trying to get better information to them and circumvent that initially is really the same idea that comes in with vaccines. We don't want to try and find a cure for measles so after people get sick, we can get rid of it. We want to find the vaccine and the prevention so we never have to deal with it in the first place. So how do we cause people to not become misinformed? How do we educate people before they ever reach this point of believing these lies? And I think that comes in really importantly with how we engage with people, because we might never change people's minds. You know, my mom is an anti-vaxxer, and I've been obviously on this larger platform and this advocacy role for more than a year now. She still believes they're very dangerous, still to this day. And I don't think she'll ever change her mind. But the way I treated her and the way I spoke to her, even if it was unwarranted, even if she didn't deserve the kindness or the empathy I provided to her, because I did that, people in my own family decided to get their shots and get caught up and make that decision for themselves, because they saw, oh, Ethan's being kind, Ethan's being understanding and empathetic, and my mother is acting out of fear and desperation and trying to fight against these conspiracies that I don't know if I believe. And so I'm going to believe Ethan. I'm going to follow what he's saying because he's taking the higher ground or being kind. And so that prevention took place rather than the cure towards my mother's ideology. And I think that can resonate with a lot of people. So your aunt or uncle or your grandparents might believe that vaccines are causing autism, but instead of trying to convince them they're wrong, just treat them kindly, listen to them, speak to them, point out where they're incorrect. And if you handle that well, other people might not believe them. And that's really important.
What a meaningful message. In my business, we used to talk about that if you get on a talk show that's conservative, for example, you may not be able to convince the host, but what you're trying to do is convince the audience. So exactly. Your temperament, right, is more important than trying to win the argument, right? And so I think you teach us that once again. So Ethan, thank you so much for being here, but really more importantly for the work that you're doing that's impacting millions of people across this country and across this world. And thank you for teaching us on how to do our work better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Melanie Mozoon, and I'm proud to serve as the president of the Immunization Partnership's Board of Directors. Thank you, Ethan, for sharing your inspiring story with us today. It's important for people to hear, not only across Texas, but across the nation. To all who tuned in for today's event, thank you for joining us. This year's luncheon looks a little bit different than our previous events, but we're so grateful that we were able to connect with you, even if it wasn't in person. Every single day, we at the Immunization Partnership are hard at work educating Texans on the important role that immunizations play in keeping our family, friends, neighbors, and community healthy. As researchers continue developing a vaccine to protect us from COVID-19, we will continue to work overtime to keep Texans informed on the progress of this new vaccine and educate them on the vaccines currently available to protect us from deadly diseases. Our goal is to ensure that all Texans are protected from all vaccine-preventable diseases. Now more than ever, we need your support to build momentum statewide to prevent what's preventable.
Before we leave you today, we would like to take a moment to say thanks again to our honorees, Jacqueline Cox and Community Health Choice. And to Ethan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Your message is such an important one as we navigate a new normal brought to us by today's extraordinary pandemic. And a special thanks also to our protector sponsors, Amerigroup and the Spirit Golf Association, and to our partner sponsors, Children's Memorial Hermann Hospital, Allison and Dan Connolly, Jacqueline and Colin Cox, HEB, Houston Methodist, Kelsey Siebold Clinic, Melanie Mazoon, Lindy and Tom McGee, Methodist Healthcare Ministries, and UT Health.
Each person tuning in today and so many others are the reason TIP can continue its important work. Unfortunately, we are facing a difficult time when many people across the state and nation speak out against the importance of vaccines, resulting in increased vaccine hesitancy and decreased vaccine rates. Together, we can overcome these challenges by educating the community, advocating for public policy, and enhancing immunization best practices research. Together, we can recapture the narrative and normalize the pro-immunization conversation.
TIP works hard each and every day to expand their reach, meet people where they are, understand the local and statewide challenges, and implement changes that help protect our communities through immunizations. But they can't do it alone. Your gifts enable TIP to expand and enhance their important initiatives, especially during such turbulent times like these. Please support TIP today through a monetary gift by texting Immunize USA to 713-715-7372. Your gifts will enable TIP to continue striving to achieve a vision of a community protected from vaccine-preventable diseases. Thank you again for joining us today. We wish you and your families all the very best.